So we are seeing a flood of entities who dominate the $20.6 trillion global pension fund market quietly make a move into Bitcoin. And yes, this global pension fund market is actually twice the size of BlackRock and also twice the size of all of the money in the ETFs globally, which makes us kind of ask the question, are they going to have twice the impact on the Bitcoin price that the BlackRock and the ETFs did have on the price of Bitcoin when they launched earlier in the year in January? Today, we're going to be exploring what is going on because we have a new pension fund in the US FOMOing into Bitcoin, and this comes only weeks after the 9th largest pension fund in America, the Wisconsin Pension Fund, allocated $160 million into Bitcoin. And they said, guess what? That is just a starter position. We are actually going to be allocating more than that 160 million because we want a 1% allocation to Bitcoin. So let's break down what is actually going on, what's the recent news, and just how big this market is potentially in size. So the Jersey City Pension Fund is the newest cab off the rank to buy Bitcoin in America. Okay, so they came out and they said, look, we're watching very, very closely what the Wisconsin Pension Fund is doing. They haven't actually announced the exact allocation that they're going to be buying to Bitcoin, but you can see the mayor actually said the Jersey City Pension Fund is in process of updating paperwork to the SEC to allocate a percentage of its fund to the Bitcoin ETFs, similar to the Wisconsin Pension Fund, who made that 2% allocation. So those are the direct words coming from the mayor. Again, we don't have the exact data or the exact amount that they are going to be buying, but this is obviously inspired by the Wisconsin Pension Fund. Okay, so for those who might have missed it, we can see the Wisconsin Pension Fund bought $160 million worth of Bitcoin earlier in the year, the 9th largest US pension fund. But there's a lot more to this story that makes the Wisconsin Pension Fund a very, very interesting one. Okay, we can see by this article here, it says Wisconsin's pension fund is one of the most financially sound funds in the US. Okay, we can see Wisconsin ranks number 5 in funded ratio at a 100.2% funding figure. So this means they are ahead of the nationwide average of 78%. Now, again, this is interesting because most pension funds are under allocated. Most pension funds are underfunded. Okay. Now, Wisconsin has traditionally been a very prudent investor, a very safe investor. Okay. They're in the top percentile when it comes to the amount of funding that's in these pension funds. Okay. So Wisconsin has built this reputation by being a prudent, safe, good investor. Now they're allocating to Bitcoin, which is asking many people to ask themselves a lot of very interesting questions. Okay. Again, I want to talk a little bit more about why we could be seeing a little bit of a difference in the, corporate adoption of Bitcoin, and why the pension funds look to be taking a little bit of a different twist, so to say. But I want to play this interesting video that I found really interesting, and we could see even on the national news, people are talking about this move from the Wisconsin Pension Fund. So let's see if the audio works on this for you guys.
The Wisconsin Pension Fund, ranked as one of the most fiscally sound in the nation, took bold action this year. It invested in Bitcoin. Most all government workers are part of the employee trust fund that pays out retirement benefits. But for a pension fund widely known for being stable, prudent, and smart with investments, is this a departure or right on brand? Our next guest says it's certainly turning heads. We should note PBS Wisconsin employees are participants in the Wisconsin retirement system. We are joined by David Kraus, Marquette University Emeritus Associate Professor of Finance. And thanks very much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
So what is the reaction within the kind of investment industry to this news?
The investment industry is pretty amazed that a pension fund this early in the introduction of the Bitcoin ETF came on board. They expected it might take several years before there would be institutional involvement with Bitcoin investing.
So
And it's also worth mentioning the Wisconsin pension fund was earlier than most people know because, as we laid out in the title of today's videos, these pension funds and these large allocators only really have to disclose their holdings on a quarterly basis. So it's only at the end of each quarter do we actually find out who's been buying Bitcoin. Now, I do think it's really interesting that these pension funds that are over allocated and typically known as being these prudent investors are allocating to Bitcoin, because if you actually look at which corporations have adopted Bitcoin so far, there's a little bit of a different story going on, okay? Most people would know that MicroStrategy stock was going down for a very, very, very long time before Michael Saylor adopted Bitcoin, okay? A lot of people saw it as a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a speculation. Now, I do disagree with that framing, but if you have a look at many of the companies who have adopted Bitcoin, they do have a lot of similarities amongst them. Okay, so this here, for those who don't know, is the chart of MicroStrategy stock. As you can see, it was essentially trading sideways for 20 years after that massive crash after the dot-com bubble. Okay, and Metaplanet was actually seeing something different. They're the newest kid on the block when it comes to this Bitcoin speculative attack playbook that we are seeing unfold, and I think accelerate at a pretty great rate. We're going to plan a video for that on that topic for you guys in a little bit later on, maybe later this week. But you can see this is Metaplanet's stock price for the past 10 years, trending down. You can see very clearly where they adopted Bitcoin. Bitcoin has thrown some life into their stock, into their company, okay? So people are beginning to recognize that Bitcoin is a little bit of a Hail Mary. And again, maybe it is the companies who are not benefiting the most from the fiat system. Maybe it's the companies who are suffering a little bit. They're the ones who have CEOs who are most incentivized to actually look into an alternative or a solution, being Bitcoin. But I think we're seeing, the fact we're seeing something a little bit different in the US pension fund race, I think that's noteworthy. I think that's really interesting. I think that's something we should be paying a little bit more attention to. Something else we should be paying a little bit more attention to is the fact that the Wisconsin pension fund's actually in the top 25 when it comes to global pension funds. And as this article is laid out, they're going to continue buying Bitcoin until they have a 1 or 2% allocation. But they're not the only pension fund who's been allocating to Bitcoin. Last year, the third largest pension fund in the world, Korea's National Pension Service, purchased $20 million of Coinbase shares. Okay. And we also know that the $1.7 trillion giant in Japan was quote unquote investigating Bitcoin for diversification strategies. Okay. And that is obviously, that's big. They are one of the biggest pension funds in the entire world. So this isn't just a US situation. There does appear to be lots of other pension funds having a look at Bitcoin. And I think this is interesting because the pension fund market is massive. So this article here shows you guys what I alluded to in the introduction of today's video. The ETFs held around $11 trillion of assets at the end of last year in 2023. So a lot of people say the ETF market is one of the biggest markets in the world. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, they have about $10 trillion of assets under management at their firm. Okay, everybody knows ETFs are massive, BlackRock is massive. But the pension fund market is twice the size of these two markets. Again, I hope this puts it into a little bit more perspective of just how much capital there could be sloshing out there in the world looking for a safe haven, looking for Bitcoin, because there are more places, okay, to, provide you guys with even more context. We can actually see that the global sovereign wealth funds, that's also around $10 trillion in size. So we can see some of the larger ones here that we have actually talked about very recently here on the channel, like the Norway Government Pension Fund. They're obviously out there, buying MicroStrategy shares. We talked about that last week. We can also see some very other interesting names on this list. We can see the Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund, $450 billion. Saudi Arabia, they have about $700 billion in their sovereign wealth fund. We can see that these markets are massive. They're tens of trillions of dollars in size, and they are just waiting. They are just absolutely begging for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is slowly becoming a bigger part in all of these players, diversification strategy, so to say. That's exactly what the Japanese pension fund is talking about. They're talking about needing Bitcoin from a sovereignty standpoint, from a diversification strategy away from, dollars and traditional investment means. So we've got a few comments in the chat. Chat is lively today. Welcome to everyone who's tuning in on this Thursday afternoon. Dan says he enjoyed the video yesterday about Russia. Russia's just another entity who we've been talking about, who have also been getting into Bitcoin in a really, really big way. I might talk about Russia more in a moment. Before we do that, I want to give a massive shout out to today's flagship sponsor. That is, of course, Rhino Bitcoin. Okay. For those of you who don't know, Rhino is an amazing all-in-one Bitcoin super application. You can buy Bitcoin on Rhino. You can sell Bitcoin on Rhino. You can even buy these really cool Visa cards on Rhino. Let me show you guys exactly what they look like, because these are the kind of things that I like to take advantage of. If you're traveling, having a US dollar Visa card where you can, load Bitcoin onto it and you convert the Bitcoin into dollars pretty seamlessly and pretty easily, that's a really, really cool thing to actually take advantage of, because it is very difficult, traveling and living purely on a Bitcoin standard. Obviously, not everyone accepts Bitcoin. So Visa cards are super cool. As you can see, the Rhino debit card is coming soon. They have a lot of really cool features coming soon. You can use Rhino for remittances. You can use Rhino in a multi-signature setup, so you can connect directly to Casa, all in the one Rhino application. So again, encourage you guys, check out what Rhino is doing. A link to their application will be down below in the description of today's video, okay? So that is Rhino. Now let's talk more about Russia and answer Dan's question here. So Russia's a really interesting one, okay? Because what's going on in Russia, I think, is absolutely fascinating. They recently came out and said on September 1st, so in about 3 days' time, we're actually going to be testing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as this international currency. We're going to start actually using it for trade, okay? I thought that was massive, and a couple of people were talking about that on Twitter when the news dropped earlier in the week. But let's not forget, Russia has also approved 2 different crypto exchanges in the country, and they've also recently legalized Bitcoin mining, okay? So this has all happened in the past couple of months in Russia. So if you do want to learn more about that, go check out the video that Dan is talking about. Funny enough, that video was actually also posted over on our Rumble, okay? So after watching what's happened to other amazing Bitcoin companies in the space, we've obviously put a lot more focus into Rumble recently. So we have been posting all of our videos to Rumble for the past, 6 weeks or so, but we're going to be putting a lot more effort into it. We're going to even be curating some special Rumble only content where I might let down my hair a little bit, and when the censorship police aren't on my tail, maybe we're going to be covering some topics that we don't normally cover over here on YouTube. So again, go and follow us on Rumble. We actually tried to live stream the video to Rumble today, but on the back end right now, it's telling me I had an error. So apparently we didn't stream this one to Rumble. But again, if you enjoy our content, jump on over to Rumble, give us a sub, and stay tuned for all of the exclusive content we got planned coming on Rumble. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, McLovin in the chat says that all of this adoption by major institutions, and people still say that Bitcoin has no use case and it's backed by nothing. Yeah, I think that's sound advice, McLovin. I think the Bitcoin detractors are going to continue being detractors for a long time, and I'm not sure what price it's going to take for us to change their minds, or how many nation states or how many pension funds or how many sovereign wealth funds are going to have to FOMO into Bitcoin before the Bitcoin detractors actually begin to change their minds on Bitcoin. Okay, I mean, the Jersey City pension fund, it's not necessarily a small pension fund, but again, they want to copy what the Wisconsin pension fund has done. Okay, I think we're seeing warning signs that these pension funds are not mucking around. They're being very serious. Okay, again, speaking of serious, or maybe I should say less serious content, linked down below is our Rumble. So go check us out on Rumble. We'd love to see you guys over there. And while we're talking about content, different content, exclusive content, earlier in the week, we put out an interview with Dennis Porter. Dennis is the man who I think is orange pilling more politicians in America than any other Bitcoiner in the world. So he obviously has his finger on the pulse, so to say, about what do these politicians think about Bitcoin? How is America thinking about this geopolitical arms race that's going on in the Bitcoin space? Russia, China, all these BRICS countries are slowly beginning to get into Bitcoin in a big way. What does America think about it? Well, if you're interested in finding some answers to any of those questions, as you can see, we did recently interview Dennis Porter. It was an in-person interview that happened in Nashville. One of the other co-founders from Bitcoin News, Rob, had to take over that interview because I obviously wasn't allowed into America. So again, go check out that interview. It's a great one. Rob is a far better interviewer than I could ever wish to be. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy that video. And with all that said, guys, I might end this live stream here. Thank you so much to the 1,098 of you guys who tuned in live. If you enjoyed it, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Rumble. We're putting out 3 videos a week, and we try to make them as short and sharp as possible to make them as time efficient for you, okay? We don't cover all the news. Lots of other channels do that. We only cover the news that we think is most interesting in the week. So if all of that sounds interesting, subscribe and